Weirdest way I've ever met a boyfriend or girlfriend. This is one of my all-time favorite life stories. I was in high school at a soccer game at a park in my hometown and it rained out. It was raining very heavily. Everyone was leaving with rides or cars and I didn't have one, so I ran into one of those shelters at bigger public parks. She was standing under it too, calling for a ride. We ended up talking, laughing, and goofing off. I started to kind of show off and go out in the rain and then I noticed a football. I picked it up and said, "Bet you can't mess with me." And what do you know? She jumps off the wooden picnic table and chases me all over this muddy soccer field. We then fall into a particularly wet and muddy puddle forming in the field. Instead of getting up, we ended up lying down. All in good fun, of course. So then my friend with the truck was the first one there to get either of us, so she came with us. We went to a Dairy Queen, pulled out a hose we saw attached to the side of the building and hosed each other off right there in the parking lot as concerned adults were like, "What?" To this day, several girlfriends later, she's still the most beautiful, funny, and free-spirited person I've ever met. Why has this not been made into a movie starring Ellen Page and Michael Cera yet? Story 2. When I was in high school, I had a crush on a girl who lived in the same dorm as me. I would often walk by her room and catch glimpses of her. From what I could tell, she might have been very shy or perhaps had some feelings for me too. Whenever I looked at her, she would sometimes look away quickly and smile, which made me think there might be something more. This went on for about a month. Then one night, something unexpected happened. I was in my room playing a video game by myself when I suddenly heard someone enter my room and sit down on my bed. To my surprise, it was the girl I had a crush on. It turned out she had had a few drinks and mustered up the courage to come into my room and start a conversation. That night, we decided to go out together. There was an immediate spark between us. We got along really well. This marked the beginning of what turned out to be one of the longest and most complicated relationships I've ever experienced. Story 3. My older French cousin came to visit me in Japan 5 or so years ago. We were so close, even from across a continent that only I knew. I was aware that she hadn't had an opportunity to try dating ladies yet due to her isolated surroundings. So with her judgment, I looked in the local FB for a girl who'd be enthusiastic in meeting her when she came to Japan, and he soon found a nice college student who was really interested. I made them meet. I was their interpreter during the days they were together, and great fun was had by all during the whole process. The Japanese girl loved spending a night with her. My cousin realized that she was into guys after all. Anyway, after she went back to France, I met the Japanese girl again and we dated too. She was utterly ridiculous. She was entertaining, but she also had some intriguing qualities, but it didn't last long. That was a core memory. My cousin was deeply amused by the whole situation. It sounds like he went above and beyond to create a memorable and enjoyable time for his cousin. Imagine. Must have been both exciting and a little nerve-wracking to be the bridge between two people from such different backgrounds. Story 4. While studying abroad in Morocco, I stayed at a hotel where I met a stunning Arab woman. I first saw her in the hotel lounge, where she was reading a newspaper. In the United States, I might have approached her to strike up a conversation, but being mindful of cultural differences, I decided not to intrude. The next day, I discovered that she was actually the cultural director and Arabic professor from my study abroad program. We started interacting more frequently during our trips, and in the classroom, we would chat, joke around, and tease each other, building a friendly rapport. After about a month of working together, she decided to leave her job at the program to work elsewhere. A week after she resigned, she and I started seeing each other romantically. We dated for a few months, and it turned out to be a memorable experience. Story 5. I responded in desperation to a series of ridiculous Craigslist ads for a new roommate, seeking alpha male, twins, etc., for the house of fine gentlemen. I didn't know what to expect, but I went to meet the future housemates. Apparently, the ads were made to be ridiculous in order to attract a housemate with a similar sense of humor. Immediately, I felt this fiery and reciprocal connection with the guy who answered the door. I filled out a sort of questionnaire which was full of talking points. We had a drink, did the house tour, and talked with the other housemate and another candidate for like 2 hours. The place was great, totally affordable, and across the street from my school or work. They picked me and moved in 2 weeks later. The crush and I stayed in touch to arrange the moving day, and when I moved in, I was freaking out a bit because I realized that the crush was only getting worse. I wondered if I had made a huge mistake. Luckily, he worked 16-hour days every day and wasn't around too much in the evenings. I thought this would make the situation bearable, but I felt really bad for him. He was always exhausted, and since I was studying Marxist theory at the time, in one of our conversations at moving day, I recommended he check out a bit of Capital or the Communist Manifesto. The next day, the second day of my living there, I came home from work at 5 p.m. I saw him sitting on the couch, looking like he really needed to talk. Turns out that he listened to Mark's an audiobook at work, got overwhelmed, realized that he was horribly overworked, and made the decision to leave early that day. On the third day, he kissed me. We've since moved out together and are engaged, with a child on the way. He's home by 6 most nights. Story 6. It all began with something as simple as a poke on Facebook. I thought it was funny that you could poke people on Facebook even if you weren't friends with them. So I decided to have a bit of fun and poke some people I didn't know at all, just to see how they would react. One of the people I poked was a girl who happened to be friends with one of my friends from school. When she noticed the poke and realized she didn't know who I was, she sent a message asking about it. I told her the truth, that I had seen her on my friend's Facebook profile and thought it would be amusing to poke someone I didn't know. Fast forward a few years, and it turns out that we actually have a lot in common. We ended up getting to know each other better, and she has become one of the most important and wonderful people in my life. It's amazing how a simple and random act can lead to such a meaningful connection. Story 7. So I am quantum gender? Well, no. My fiancée considers herself male and sometimes her biological female gender. She says that after an experience in a back alley with some boys when she was young, she assures me it was merely threats and nothing else took place. Not that it makes any less traumatizing. She just felt bare when she dressed as a female. Her dad, however, was a historical battle reenactor. So after a few days, my fiancée would be dressed up as a British redcoat and have her pretend to be in a field. Since then, she dressed as a male and never looked back. Myself, I pretty much view my chest as an aesthetic piece, and dressing up in female clothing, for me, it is incredibly liberating and cooling. I identify as male, and my fiancée, depending on her mood, is either male or female, or if you prefer some other gender. It doesn't bother me. It's the person I want, not the aesthetics. Story 8. I am a male crossdresser, but because of, strange hormones, I have a chest. It's not really an issue because my mother's side of the family generally seems to have thin bone structure. My chest isn't big, so they're pretty much no problem to hide. People ask me if I'm a hermaphrodite. No, I am not. I have male organ and I consider myself male. My voice is described as somewhat androgynous, also I'm not into girls. In the year 2006, a costume designer buddy of mine hosted a costume party. Owing to a continuous losing streak of bets, I was dressed as a Georgian noblewoman with matching wig, fan, and corset. At one point, I was standing in front of a ceiling-to-floor mirror during the party and checking myself out. I have to admit, I totally would fall in love with myself as I was looking lovely, and didn't even find females captivating at that point. So I'm pretty much gliding around the party, flirting and generally being good-looking. And then he came in. One of the host's friend dressed as a hussar and resembling Adamant, but more appealing. We got talking, and a few drinks later, we were back at his place being intimate. My thoughts at the time were something along the lines of nice muscles. Indeed, as it happened, my date was a woman, though she mistakenly believed I was a woman, which led to the rather embarrassing conversation of having to explain that I thought she was a man. She protested that she was not a masculine, that she didn't have to prove it to me to be one. She was a man and attracted to men, and if I would care to step into the bedroom, she would, show me. What ensued was quite possibly the best night I've ever had. Due to my girlfriend's gender quibbles, she oscillates in which pronoun she uses and is currently happy to use female ones. We got engaged last summer and recently welcomed our first child. Story 9. After we finished our drinks and had used some other stuff, we were getting ready to leave. At that moment, completely unexpected, a friend of mine sent me a text message. She was feeling bored and was with her friend, looking for something interesting to do. Since I didn't think she would actually want to join us, because I assumed she would prefer something like grabbing a bite to eat rather than coming to a nightclub, I don't really expect her to come along. However, to my surprise, she and her friend decided to join us. The night turned out to be fantastic. There were many Brazilian dancers performing, which was quite an impressive sight. I spent a lot of time on the dance floor with my female friend and her companion, enjoying the music and the atmosphere. After a while, my male friend and I decided it was time to call it a night. We wrapped up our time at the club and made a quick stop at a diner, eventually heading home around 6 in the morning. During the night, I had the chance to dance with a girl who, as it turned out, would later become my girlfriend. We seemed to connect really well and had a great time dancing together, which was a nice end to an enjoyable night. My friend and her pal wished to get together again the following day, so my male friend and I came up with an even more absurd idea. New Jersey's Dance Club. The crowd at the club that Sunday night was quite lively. This was shortly after New Year's, so we were still in the festive spirit. We decided to wear all the New Year's decorations in attire that hadn't been discarded yet, adding a bit of extra fun to the night. To make things even more amusing, we came up with the idea of speaking in terrible British accents and pretending that we were from England. We told everyone we had flown into New York for the New Year celebrations and had been partying nonstop for the past 6 or 7 days. We acted as if we were completely disoriented, with no idea of where we were or how we got there, still believing it was New Year's. This playful act caught the attention of the dancers at the club. They were very curious about our accents and frequently asked us questions like, "What do we sound like to you?" We embraced the role and responded with enthusiasm. The other clubgoers also got into the spirit of things and kept buying us drinks throughout the night, eager to share their American tradition with us. The girls in the club played along with our story. They were particularly impressed that we somehow managed to get American girlfriends during our short stay in the country. It turned out to be a memorable night, full of laughs and surprises, thanks to our playful act. After 2 nights, I decided that my lady friend's friend was really something special to have gone along with all of this. Plus, she was really cute. I got to know her better, and now, 2 years later, things have calmed down a bit and gone back to normal. In my head, I know she's the one I'm going to marry. Still, don't tell her just yet. Story 10. I student taught at a local high school my senior year of college in order to get my license to teach high school English. Much less glamorous than a James Bond's license, but it's what I love to do, and it provides countless hours of enjoyment while I watch my little high schoolers do stupid stuff all day. High schoolers are hilarious. My student teaching consisted of me being a full-time instructor for 4 classes in high school. The summer after my student teaching practicum, while I was waiting to hear back from several teaching vacancies, I got a text from a buddy of mine. She tells me that she's heading over to my apartment with 2 of her friends and wants to hang out. I'm down with that. She's hilarious, but she's always a lot of fun to be around, and I do love meeting new people. Vicky, Anna, Samantha, and their British friend John show up at my door, and my immediate thought was, wow, Samantha is the prettiest of them. We stumble through introductions and then make our way to my room as a group in order to partake of the blessed herb. As it turns out, the 3 girls attended the high school I student taught at. Not while I was there, of course. They were all college age at this time, but it happened to be their alma mater. They asked me all sorts of little questions like, does Mrs. So-and-so still work there? Or did Mr. Whatever get married yet? And so on and so forth. Suddenly, Samantha pipes up from the little nest of blankets she has created on my bed. Amanda told me that the college counselor got fired. Did you hear about that? Through the haze, my mind sends for a distress signal. We taught someone named Amanda. With a quiet strength, I turn to Samantha and say, "What's your last name?" "Smith," she says. "Why do you ask?" Hanging on my wall is a piece of 8.5 by 11 line loose leaf paper, on which is printed in large red letters, "We will miss you. Thank you for teaching us. From period 3. I kept it as a memento of my student teaching experience, mainly because it made me really happy when I got it. Kids are adorable. Right under the word teaching, Anne crammed 9th grade girl handwriting, as a note, "Thank you, Mr. Aurora. You're one of the best teachers I've ever had. Amanda Smith." I take down the sheet of paper and hand it to Samantha, pointing to the note in question. When she recovered from the shock of learning that the man who had just chalked her out was the freshman English teacher for her younger sister, Samantha and I dated for several months. And yes, I met the parents of little Amanda, and little Amanda proceeded to tell all of her little friends that Mr. Aurora goes out with my sister now. As an important point of fact, Samantha looks absolutely nothing like her little sister. Story 11. Back when I was a teenager, I was a regular in a Yahoo chat room. I met a boy there at the same age and we connected. A year later, we entered into a long-distance relationship and everything is going well. We send pictures and talk on the phone and make plans to visit. One day, I receive a call from what sounds like an older woman. She asks me who I am and where I live. I was confused and didn't want to answer until she told me she was the mother of her daughter. The same boy I was in a relationship with for over a year. Needless to say, I ended the relationship later that night when she called. I told her I'm not an odd gender. I'm not a criminal and that she was seriously messed up. I was also really heartbroken because I'd grown really attached to the person I thought she was. Fast forward 2 years later and I received a call from her. Things were going great in my life, so I chose to ignore her untamed, confused teenage behavior. We talk on the phone often and soon old emotions start to surface. 2 years later, we move in together and she confesses she feels more like a man than a woman. I already knew this. She sounds like a male, she dresses like one, she wrapped herself. Although it wasn't new to me, I offered my full support and we discussed the process involved in switching gender. I truly loved her, but due to the fact that she continued to lie and couldn't keep a job, we had to separate. I'm now very happy living with my boyfriend and we're expecting our first child. It's just funny how things turn out. Story 12. One time I went to a club with 2 buddies of mine. We got there at midnight and I had a drink. He then offers me a strong drink. I never tried it before, so I took one. A few minutes later, I ran into an acquaintance who was with an incredibly gorgeous girl. No lies, she was the most attractive girl in the place. I was introduced to her. Her name was Claudia. After about 30 minutes, I didn't feel anything, so I asked my friend for another drink. At this point, it is still early in the night, probably around 11:45. The main DJ doesn't come on till 1 a.m. Next thing I know, I'm waking up comfortably in my bed. I glance at the clock. It's 3 p.m. I look outside the window. My car isn't there. I have no wallet or cell phone. Eventually, I contacted my friend who I was with. He brings my car back and explains that we were at the club partying until 4 a.m. Then went to a diner. At the diner, apparently I bought the entire table, including utensils and food down with me. Anyways, I told him that I was furious that I hadn't made a move on that girl. At around 6, I got a call on my cell phone. It was Claudia. We dated for a while and it was awesome. Story 13. When I was in the army, I told one of my army buddies who was getting a lot of mail from his girlfriend that I wished I could get some mail like that. A couple of days later, he gave me the email to his girlfriend's roommate. We talked for 7 months over the phone and email or Skype. When I finally came home, I flew her out to the army base where I was at for us to finally meet face to face. That was in 2007, and I've since got out of the army and moved back to New York and attended university. She moved up here shortly after I got out and now lives only 5 blocks away, and we've been together happily for 4 years. I plan on buying an engagement ring with my college graduation money. God, I've seen what you've done for others. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 14. I'll keep as many names out of it as possible. It was February of 2010, and my friends and I had just moved back into our dorms for the spring semester. We were in our second year at our college on the East Coast. Chatroulette was just starting to become a big thing in my school, and so we would occasionally spend some time. This particular night, I was in the lounge with 3 of my friends, all crowded around 2 of our laptops and Chatroulette. We met some girls from Norway who were up early at a class waiting for it to start. A 45-year-old Dutch man who spoke a little English, but apparently was an amateur house DJ. Then we hit refresh. We were looking at this gorgeous blonde indie with one of those neat little knit hats on, with a bowl in one hand and a lighter in the other. We started talking to her for a long while. She was a grad student in Illinois and had just got back to her apartment from some time at her parents' house, and she figured go on Chatroulette, be still in my heart. We goofed around for a while. She sang us some Disney songs, which shocked us away because she had an amazing voice. And my friend and I responded by singing Ben Folds. I know, we were some classy guys. After a while, people started going to bed. Until almost 5 hours later, I'm sitting by myself in the lounge at 4 a.m. talking to this stranger on the internet. We just got along really well. Eventually, I had to call it a night, but there was no way I could just go on with my life without ever talking to this girl again. So, I asked for her name to look her up on Facebook, and she obliged. I was on the tail end of a relationship at the time, so my mind wandered romantically thinking about her, but it was all absurd stuff. She lived halfway across the country. It just wasn't possible. We started talking in Facebook chat, but things were just strange. She asked if I wanted to start Skyping instead, and I figured, why not? From that day on, we spent at least an hour a day talking to each other on Skype. We shared a great deal of our lives with one another, even though we had to share it through a computer screen. I started to feel a familiar sensation in my chest whenever I saw her window pop up on my screen, and it terrified me. But I figured, why not? This is already the strangest thing that's ever happened to me, so why not just be as honest as I can? Late one night, my roommate was asleep, but I texted her to see if she was up anyway. We started Skyping and sharing music with one another like we always do, and I said 3 words that I'd only ever told one person outside of my family at the time. She gave me the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen and said them back. I was on top of the world. I could barely contain my excitement. Things continued like this for a while, and with spring break coming up, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my time off. She had jokingly suggested that I come visit her over spring break sometimes in the past, but I brought it up again as a serious idea. She was elated, and so I did what is, admittedly, the most irresponsible and ridiculous thing I've ever done in my life. I bought a plane ticket and flew across the country to spend a week living with a girl that I met in Chatroulette. The first thing she said to me in person, after running across the airport and hugging me, was, "Oh my God, you're actually real." I almost cried. It was one of the most amazing moments I've ever experienced. We spent the week doing everything. We spent a night in a corner suite in a hotel in Chicago. We ate at the nicest restaurant in town, where I managed to get served, despite my appearance. We walked around the city, went to the aquarium, and went to MoMA. It was just unreal. We did a lot of what girls and boys do when they're alone, but the most amazing feeling was being able to actually look into each other's eyes at the same time, something that is impossible to do with a webcam. Sadly, our time together drew to a close. It tore us apart, knowing we would have to go back to seeing each other only on Skype. But summer was coming, and I promised she would see me again. We kept Skyping, and although bittersweet at first, we began to enjoy ourselves the way we used to. She was going on a vacation with her father that summer in Florida. I was attending some working vacation training thing, and he was allowed to bring a guest, so he brought her. What town in Florida was this happening in? Oh, just the town that most of my family in Florida happened to live in. How convenient. We were once again afforded the time to stand in each other's arms and be happy. The story does not have a happy ending, however. She had an internship with a music promotion group, and as such, she traveled around the country for the rest of the summer working festivals and whatnot. Communication became difficult without a computer and with her busy schedule. I worried, but I tried my hardest not to assume the worst. Unfortunately, those fears were confirmed one morning when I awoke to find her tagged in Facebook pictures that clearly showed her involved with another guy. We talked about it, and the communication was just too difficult to manage, so we broke it off. Fast forward to today and we're back on speaking terms. She came to me saying that things ended with the other guy and that she admitted making a terrible mistake. We've been speaking as friends for a while, both apprehensive about how we feel. She ended up moving out to New York City, which puts her a train ride away from me. I've already been given plenty of advice on the situation, so I'm not looking for more here. I'm just telling a story. Out of the millions of people in Chatroulette at the time, through some grand cosmic coincidence, we were put together at a time when we most needed what the other had to offer. We were both happy, and that has to mean something. Though it was a bittersweet ending, it was a good thing he had closure in what was meant to be a painful heartbreak. Story 15. I met my ex when I went to the dentist and she was my dental assistant. I was both playful and suggestive, hoping to create a sense of intimacy and connection, but I didn't think anything of it because she was older. Plus, she was my dental assistant. Anyways, I went home and later that night she added me as a friend on Facebook and sent me a message. I was too slow to realize she liked me from her message, but my older brother realized it, so he proceeded to grab my phone while he messaged her for me. After that, we started talking and then dated for a while. I should have stopped him from sending that message. Now, I met my current girlfriend at a party. I didn't think I had a chance because a guy was trying to make moves on her all night, but I still kept trying. I realized I had her when I told her I was leaving and she leaned in to kiss me. Story 16. My mother began dating an Asian man a few years after her divorce. They stayed together for several years until they stopped seeing each other romantically. They remained friends, and since I was a teen, I also remained friends with him. We would hang out, we played Magic together from time to time, and eventually he started dating a girl my age that he met over the internet. They dated for a while, and after a year of on and off again dating, I met her. They were on and off period, and she found me very attractive. The feeling was mutual. Over time, as our connection deepened and our mutual feelings grew stronger, we eventually reached a point where our relationship evolved beyond mere conversation and flirtation, and started dating. This enraged my friend or ex-boyfriend of my mom, and he slowly began to dislike the both of us. He felt I stole her away from him. We dated for 5 years until she left me to move to New York City. Story 17. Around 4 years ago, I was deeply involved in a fan group for a particular car model. This was a car that honestly, you might need to have a bit of an obsession to appreciate as much as I did. Within this group, I got to know about 30 of the members by name. Out of those, I regularly spent time with around 10 of them. At that time, the group's website was mainly focused on people from the state where I lived. I specifically remember a thread popping up on this website where people were asked to post photos of themselves. Why, I have no idea. But I decided to begin examining or analyzing the information. On the second page, a photo of a girl was displayed that I immediately fell in love with. She was absolutely gorgeous. Perfect body, amazing porcelain skin, etc. So, just for fun, I sent her a message, introducing myself and commenting on how lovely her photo was. Her name was Lindsay. We immediately got along, talked about music and politics, family life, school, and of course, her cars. And since I have some mechanical abilities, she would turn to me for advice whenever it broke down. Our emails back and forth turned into Facebook friends, at which time I found out she lived 800 miles away from me, that of which I had my phone number listed on. I remember sitting in my apartment and having a phone number show up on my cell phone that was for an area code I had never seen in my life. So, just for fun, I answered it. She was on the other end. She wanted to complain about how her boyfriend was a headache and needed someone to talk to. So I sat there and listened and consoled her. These fun conversations continued. A couple of times we stayed on the phone all night just talking about almost nothing. I was in love with this girl. I'd never met her, but I knew she was perfect for me, and I had a feeling she was starting to feel the same way. One night she suggested we get onto Skype. It was late and I was ready for bed, but I had never really seen her in motion before, just pictures, so I jumped on the opportunity. I was greeted on the webcam by her sheer beauty. I almost was speechless, but we talked for hours. At this point we had been talking, it must have been about 2 months now. So I told her, right there, the first time I'd seen her, that I had feelings for her. She felt the same way. Keep in mind that this girl was seeing someone at the time. The next day, my heart starts to swim in ways to get to meet her. I'd never been in love with anybody in my life, and I can honestly say everybody is right in what they say about it, how it can make you do crazy things. There was a huge car show happening about 15 minutes from where I lived for a car enthusiast group. They have it every single year, and it turned out they were going to do it in my backyard this year. I decided to take the chance, to invite her up to visit and stay with me for a few days for this gathering they do every year. She accepted. The time comes, she drives as near as makes no difference 800 miles in her car that is falling apart, up to her predetermined meeting location. The hotel that the car event was, being sponsored by about 20 minutes from where I lived at the time. I see her car pull into the lot and park. I get out of my car, open her door, and pull her out into my arms. Let me just say, this was the single greatest feeling I'd ever experienced in my life. I took her back to my place. That was the greatest weekend of my life. After that event, we planned monthly visitation schedules. We flew back and forth to visit each other and had week-long vacations together. It was just heaven. After about 7 to 8 months, she started talking about moving in together, which I had no idea how to respond to. It scared me, because I didn't want to do anything to mess up our relationship. It turned out, in delaying her move, I did just that. I messed up the relationship. I gave her the impression that I didn't want it to move any further than what we had, which was entirely incorrect. This was a girl I used to have recurring dreams that I would get married with and have a family, which, by the way, I never in my life wanted to get married or have a family. She detached herself and tried to move on. We broke it off. I became absolutely miserable. I lost about 30 pounds. I got into an accident at work and hurt myself. I tried extremely hard to fill the void that she left in me. Every time I would see a photo of her or even a Facebook remark, it was as if someone had broken my heart. It was the worst emotional pain I had felt since my brother had passed away a few years earlier. I knew she still had strong feelings for me after our breakup. She tried contacting me a bunch of times, and I was always so awkward about it because I so badly wanted things to go back to the way they were, for us to move in together. But I knew it wasn't just that easy, to pick up where we left off. It ruined me, and still does today. I have someone I've been dating for about 6 months now, and I can safely say I have almost no feelings for her, which isn't her fault. She's really wonderful. I just keep having recurring dreams of Lindsay, but now I can deal with the negative feelings it gives me. I've moved on the best I can, but I know I will never forget her. She was the definition of my perfect girl. I wish I could go back and change the way I acted and tell myself to stop being weak. There were other things I did to endanger the relationship that I never realized were so bad, but I learned from that as well. It was mostly my fault it ended. I have no idea if she browses confession pages. It wouldn't surprise me if she did, but I haven't heard from her in probably about 7 to 8 months at this point. I think she has all but forgotten or moved on from me. I've made peace with that. But I will never forget her. In fact, I don't think I will ever recover from it fully. It's so terrible to lose your angel. This has to have been quite the roller coaster. Story 18. A few years ago, my then boyfriend arranged an intimate encounter involving the two of us and one of his female friends. After this experience, she and I developed a friendship. During our conversations, she revealed something that changed my perspective on the situation. She admitted that before the encounter, my boyfriend had deceived me by telling her that our relationship was terrible. He painted a picture of a troubled relationship and convinced her that he was deeply unhappy with me. He led her to believe that he wanted to be with her but was trapped in a relationship, suggesting that he would end it all if he were to leave me. However, when she met me and got to know me better, she realized that none of what he had said was true. He had simply wanted to have an affair and manipulate the situation to his advantage. This revelation helped me understand that he was a very manipulative and almost sociopathic individual who had used deceit to get what he wanted. As a result of this betrayal, both she and I decided to remove him from our lives completely. Since then, she and I have been intimate on several occasions, although our relationship has not been exclusive. This experience, as unusual as it may be, is the story of how I came to meet my current girlfriend. It's funny how tables have turned out sometimes. Story 19. Last year, I was deployed to Afghanistan with the Army and was transiently stationed on KAF, Kandahar Airfield, for a change of mission to begin the Kandahar City offensive. While in line for a chow, I noticed a nice-looking female in front of me dressed in a DCU Navy uniform. Now, I knew this girl looked familiar, so I got a closer look, verified her name tape, addressed her by her first name, and found out it was indeed the girl I thought it was. This girl, who I had not seen or talked to in 8 years, was in my high school class, and I used to have a crush on her, but she was way out of my league back then and never wanted anything to do with me. Long story short, we started talking. Went out on some dates there on KAF, got along, and now we're an item. And I've since gone out of the army and am moving to Rochester next month to be with her. But I still can't get over what the odds were of running into her there. I'd not talked to her in 8 years. We're not even Facebook friends. I had no idea she was in the military. We were 2 of 3 people from our class of 76 to join the service. I was only in KAF for about 2 weeks. And of the 30,000 some people on KAF, with 5 or 6 dining facilities, I happened to be right behind her in line at that point in time. Sometimes the world's a much smaller place than you think. What an incredible encounter. It's amazing how life can surprise us with such unexpected twists. Story 20. My girlfriend, now wife. My brother met a girl from Rio de Janeiro. He lives in Toronto, started a long-distance relationship which ran for 2 years and then they got engaged. My mother insisted and paid for it so that I could attend the wedding in Rio. Hey, why not? Free trip to Brazil. Walking down the aisle, I locked eyes with the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen standing in one of the pews. Later at the reception, I started asking around about who she was. At the time, I was 44 but looked younger. One of my sisters said, "Kelly, she's definitely not around your age." I said, "No, maybe 21 or 22. My other sister, who has no shame, walked right up to her. "Do you speak English?" She said yes. "How old are you?" 28. My sister, "Want to meet my handsome brother?" "Sure." I was utterly stunned. Every guy in the place had their eye on her. Jealousy reigned from all of my brother's friends. We talked for a while, and before she left, I asked her to dinner. She said yes. I only had 2 days left in Brazil, and she had to work the day after the wedding. So basically, I had 1 day. We met for a date on Copacabana Beach, walked, talked, drank, ate on an absolutely gorgeous night in Rio. I would fly home to Canada in the morning. She got in her car to leave. I took her face in my hands and said, "You'll meet again, I promise," knowing full well that was most likely untrue. As did she. 3 years later, she's here in Canada and we're married. She's in the kitchen right now making me a sandwich. Wow. Sister deserves a praise for that move. She was basically the wingman who carried what was about the start of a new romance. Story 21. Last year, I finally had the opportunity to study abroad in Japan, something I had been eagerly anticipating throughout my entire college career. Upon arriving in Japan, I encountered a girl from our program who was originally from Hawaii. She was sitting at the airport with the rest of the group, and I was immediately struck by her warmth and charm. We started talking, and our conversation flowed naturally, leading to a budding friendship with her and the other students in our program. As I got to know her better, I learned that she had previously been involved in an online relationship with another participant in our program. Understanding the situation, I decided to maintain a relationship on a platonic level. For the first couple of weeks, we interacted occasionally, but our paths didn't cross much because we were enrolled in different classes. I spent more time with the other students from Europe and America. However, things changed when the second quarter began. We ended up in the same class and I had the chance to catch up with her. Our conversations ranged from discussing games to discovering that she had never seen any of the Star Wars films. Intrigued by her lack of exposure to such pop culture staples, I invited her to my place to play the game and watch the original trilogy of Star Wars. We spent the first evening playing the game and watching the first Star Wars movie. Afterward, she went back to her dorm room. The next day, we continued our movie marathon with the second film. As we watched, our connection grew stronger, and before we knew it, we were holding hands. She stayed a bit longer, and we talked about everything and anything before she returned to her room. By the third day, we were ready to watch the final movie of the trilogy. However, we didn't make it through a quarter of it before realizing how special our connection was. From that moment on, we became inseparable. Our relationship deepened quickly, and we've been together ever since. Today, she's living with me while she finishes her studies, and I've helped her secure an internship at a nearby hospital to gain practical experience in her field. Reflecting on how our friendship evolved into something more, it's clear that our time together in Japan was the beginning of something special. Story 22. During my first semester in college, I eagerly took part in orientation and quickly formed a group of friends who I initially thought were fantastic. We had a great time together, but over time, I began to notice that they started treating me differently. This was disheartening as it was my first semester, and I was still adjusting to the new environment and making new connections. Being a woman, I naturally found myself gravitating more towards socializing with men rather than women. This preference might have been influenced by my previous experiences or just personal comfort. Feeling somewhat isolated and wanting to find a sense of belonging, I decided to get involved in campus activities. I thought joining a club or group might help me feel more connected and less alone. After researching a few options, I decided to attend a fencing practice, which was taking place in less than 30 minutes from when I made the decision. Fencing seemed like an interesting and engaging activity that might help me meet new people and improve my social life. It was around the middle of the semester when I first attended the fencing practice. During that session, a fellow participant, a guy who was quite friendly, took the time to help me understand the basics of the sport. As we talked, I shared my reasons for wanting to join the fencing club, which was partly due to my feeling of loneliness and being able to connect with others. While he was assisting me, he made a comment, jokingly saying that the friends I had been hanging out with didn't deserve my friendship. It made me reflect on my current social circle. Last week, during our fourth date, something unexpected happened. He proposed to me. It was a surprising turn of events considering how recently we had met and developed a relationship. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.